I wanted to make this video a bit ago, back when this tweet initially happened. It happened a couple days ago, but we were busy talking about other stuff on the channel, so I wasn't able to touch on it straight away, but I want to talk about it regardless. So let's refocus on Gotham Knights for just a moment. Specifically, I want to talk about this tweet from Gotham Knights' Twitter account. The tweet was, "Step into the night with the team's favorite comic books," and then they list a bunch of comic books. The community has already begun to speculate about what these comic books could potentially mean for the game, so I thought I'd throw in my 2 cents. The thought is, of course, if the team over at Gotham Knights likes these stories, they might use similar material to some of these stories in said game, Gotham Knights, which I think is a relatively fair theory, though I don't think that this is going to be like a one-to-one thing. But, you know, it might give us some idea of what to expect out of the game, especially when it comes to story direction or something like that. Perhaps you could even say some of the characters surrounding the stories that we're going to be talking about could be involved with Gotham Knights in some way. So we're going to go through each of these stories. I'll tell you a little bit about them based on what I know. I don't know everything. I haven't read every single one of these stories, but I've done my research to cover any knowledge gaps that I had. And once we've summarized roughly what that story is about, we'll then begin to speculate about what that might mean for the game, Gotham Knights. So if you're new around here and you like this type of content, I'd very much appreciate it if you could take your time to subscribe. It helps out the channel a bunch, but if you're not new around here, you already know leaving a like helps just as much. So the stories that are listed in the tweet are as followed: Gotham Central, Red Robin, The Grail, Batman, Hush, Batman, Gates of Gotham, Grayson, Agents of Spyral, Batgirl of Burnside, Batman Under the Red Hood, Birds of Prey, and Run, and Batman, The Court of Owls. So let's go through them. Starting with Gotham Central. Gotham Central is a story about the corrupt police department that is GCPD, and it heavily featured the type of characters you would expect it to. You know, Renee Montoya, Gordon, Harvey Bullock, and with the exception of Jim due to his apparent passing in the Gotham Knights universe, I think it's pretty reasonable for us to expect these types of GCPD cast regulars in Gotham Knights, regardless of this tweet, right? It's a game set in Gotham, we're gonna run across Montoya, we're gonna run across Bullock, and I believe we've actually already seen Montoya in the gameplay demo, though I'm not sure if I'm misremembering or not. I think we talked to her on the radio or something like that. Anyway, moving on to the next one. Red Robin, The Grail. I skimmed through this story because I remember reading about it a while ago, but not actually reading the story itself. I read the Wikipedia entry as well, just to catch me up on any story stuff that I missed. And from what I understand, this story is about Tim Drake. It was recently after the passing of Bruce Wayne. Everyone thought that Bruce Wayne was dead, but Tim Drake was convinced that Bruce Wayne was alive. So he ends up working alongside the League of Assassins, and I believe Azrael's involved in the story. There's a lot going on with that story, and perhaps maybe it could have something to do with the plot line that we're going to get in Gotham Knights. We already know that Bruce Wayne is dead, at least according to the story. Perhaps maybe Tim Drake's going to be obsessed with the idea that Bruce Wayne is still alive, and then it's going to turn out to not be the case. But regardless of this tweet, I think that we will see Tim Drake as a character be very connected to the idea that Bruce Wayne is still alive, despite the evidence that says that he is dead. Partially just because that's a really unique narrative that you can spin with that character, and it will be a nice way to contrast him from the rest of the roster. Dick Grayson and Barbara will certainly be the adults of the group, I think, where I think Tim will be more motivated to find out the truth behind his death. More specifically, I think he'll be more motivated to try and prove that he's alive. I don't know if Bruce is going to be dead or alive in this game. We're going to have to wait and find out. But regardless of whatever the correct answer to that is, I do think that Tim Drake will believe that Bruce Wayne's alive. Like I said, I skimmed through this story, and one of the characters that's featured in this story is Stephanie Brown's Spoiler character, so perhaps Spoiler will be involved in the game somehow, or Stephanie Brown as a character will be involved in the game somehow. Maybe she's DLC or something like that. It's just a small thing I noticed, so I thought I'd mention it. The next story they list is Batman's Hush. This is a big one people are talking about because they think it might be hinting at Hush as a character being involved in the game. That, I think, is certainly a high possibility. Hush has become quite the iconic adversary for Batman over the years. Does this confirm Hush is in the game? No, I don't think so. But at the very least, I think it raises his odds, right? If you try to run an analysis on whether you think he's going to be in the game or not, I certainly think that this makes him relatively more likely. Batman's Gates of Gotham. This is actually a story about the founding fathers of Gotham. It's tied into some conspiracy stuff, and what ends up happening is they get a bunch of the greatest detectives, which of course is the Bat family, and then they start putting together the pieces of the puzzle surrounding this conspiracy theory and the founding fathers of Gotham. For DLC related conversations, it's worth mentioning that Cassandra Cain's Black Bat character was heavily featured in this story, so perhaps maybe we're going to get Black Bat as a character, maybe as some future DLC content, who knows. Though I would say it's more likely that Gates of Gotham will just be tied into Gotham Knights through like narrative similarities rather than like a direct tie-in, similar to the other things that we're talking about on this list. The next story they mention is Grayson, Agents of Spyral. This story has Dick Grayson unmasked as Nightwing, seemingly killed off, so to keep up appearances, Dick has to stop using the Nightwing mantle, and he spends some time working as a spy in the agency Spyral, as you might assume. Not sure how this could possibly be used in Gotham Knights, but it's on the list, so I thought I'd mention it. Maybe Dick dies at the end of the game, add another body to the pile, right? Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson. I don't think that's the direction they're going. Maybe he fakes his own death in the game, or maybe this is hinting at the fact that Bruce Wayne has in fact faked his death, similar to what Dick Grayson ended up having to do in this story. The next story mentioned is Batgirl of Burnside. This story takes place between number 35 and 40 of Batgirl. I haven't personally read this story, though Batgirl is the series next up on my list now that I've been catching up on some comic book stuff, and the main reason for that is because Barbara Gordon is an amazing character and I need more of that. But I skimmed through it for the purposes of this video, and as a result I can't actually say much about the story other than that Barbara Gordon is heavily featured in it, which, like, obviously, duh. Batman Under the Red Hood is mentioned, of course. I'm sure I don't need to explain this one, but if you somehow haven't read or seen anything about Jason Todd before, please do yourself a favor and watch the Batman Under the Red Hood movie. You could also read the comic story if that's what you want to do, though I think it's definitely worth watching the movie. It was very good. Birds of Prey and Run. This is actually a Birds of Prey story involving a bunch of different characters, but if you want to take this in a potential Bat family characters joining the roster direction, Huntress was heavily featured in this series. There are some tertiary characters that are kind of related to the Bat family that I would love to talk about, but I'm thinking about doing a video where I talk about Bat family adjacent characters that could potentially be a part of this game in some way. Specifically, I want to talk about the Bat family adjacent characters that could be playable characters in the future. Let me know if that's a video we'd like to see in the future. And the last series they mentioned is Batman Court of Owls, and of course we know that the Court of Owls will be heavily featured in this game. It's already been heavily featured in the marketing right from the jump. I mean, even the first teaser we got forever ago had some Court of Owls mystery behind it. So yeah, it's practically a Court of Owls game. We're expecting the Court of Owls to be a huge part of this game, the main thing driving the narrative, and I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody. So there you go, that's every single story they mentioned. The big takeaway from this is that we might get Hush as a character in the game, maybe some type of boss battle or side mission like we saw in the Arkham series, though I would imagine it'd be a bit more fleshed out than it was in the Arkham series. Maybe he'll be a big part of the main storyline, who knows. Another big takeaway is that GCPD might be heavily involved, specifically Montoya as a character. I think it's worth mentioning that Tim Drake as a character is probably going to be very obsessed with the idea of Bruce Wayne being alive. I just think that that's an incredibly interesting narrative direction to take, and it's something that works particularly well for this video game's setup, or at least its story setup. But for the most part, I think no matter how hard you try to read into each of these individual stories and how they could potentially tie into Gotham Knights, I don't think we learn a whole lot. Anyway, you've heard my thoughts on the subject. Now I want to hear your thoughts on the subject in the comment section below. My name is Bilbsy. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe, leave a like on the video as it helps other people find it, and I'll be sure to catch you in the next one.